All right, how's it going, gang? Special Sunday edition of our NFL player prop show. Obviously, it's Super Bowl 50 freaking 6. Let's go. Hopefully, you guys completed the challenge that PrizePicks has been running over the last 7 days, and you've received your free $500 entry. It's a 5-pick flex entry, basically, and you can win up to $1,000. So all you have to do is go 5 out of 5 to win that $5,000 prize. So shout out to anybody out there who actually got the freaking job done. I know it was a long road, a long journey, a long challenge, but listen, it's all going to be worth it now, especially if you can end up going 5 for 5. Now, this 5-pick flex entry, to my understanding, to my knowledge, can be used on today's NFL slate. It could be used on a future NBA slate. So I don't think you necessarily have to go ahead and use it today. That's just my understanding, my interpretation of it. So if you don't want to use it on the NFL, you don't have to, but could be a fun way to watch tonight's big game, obviously. So we're going to be talking PrizePicks, and if you don't play on PrizePicks yet, now is a great time to do so. 100% instant deposit match still happening. All you got to do is use promo code Curry. You see it floating above my head each and every day. You see the link down in the description below. You put all the way up to $100 in there. They're going to match it dollar for dollar, giving you a 100% deposit match. So definitely take advantage of that if you're not already playing over on PrizePicks. Now, PrizePicks has went ahead and went totally nuclear here on this NFL player prop board. What I mean by that is typically we've got a big variety, big different ways that you could play these player props, but now they've added even more. I mean, they've added stuff that I don't even know if I can help you with in terms of player prop research here. Things like, I don't know, QB completion percentage, QB rating, field goals made, longest field goal, fourth down conversions allowed, time of possession allowed. I don't know that we're going to get into all that. I will leave that up to you guys, some of those crazier ways to play, but we will be talking about the tried and true ways to play, the different player prop markets that have been mainstays throughout the NFL season and playoffs. So we'll get into those. So appreciate everybody joining me this morning. Thank you so much for being here. The GOAT is back. Well, yeah, I had to come on the live stream here and do a special Super Bowl edition of our player prop research. Try to help you folks with your $500 5-pick flex entries to win $5,000, right? That would be amazing. That would be amazing if we could pull off that feat. 5 G's is a pretty nice chunk of change. Now, if you go 4 for 5, that's not the end of the world. You still get $1,000. It's still a $500 double up, right? So, you know, you don't have to go 5 for 5. Obviously, that's the goal. That's the aim. That's what we're shooting for. But even if you don't get it done on the 5 for 5, I mean, 4 for 5 is a nice consolation prize, so to speak. King Chris is in the building. He says, big day yesterday. Let's keep it rolling. Yeah, yesterday's Discord and Patreon community was completely lit. It was lit. We had a pretty strong day yesterday. Saw a lot of folks win a lot of money. Winner circle was green, green, green. And we're going to look to keep it going today with today's obvious big NFL game. Nick Sorrell says, happy Super Bowl Sunday. Let's go. Hit the thumbs up. Yeah, if you could drop a like, we'll try to get this message out to as many people as possible before the kickoff today. PXLLINN says, I love CJ Mornings. Well, I love you being here. Thanks for joining me, my friend. Rashawn says, CJ, let's get this Super Bowl Sunday money, add some NBA picks with the NFL, and we can't go wrong. Well, there's only, I think, like 2 NBA games. The NBA knows better. They ain't going to have 10 NBA games on Super Bowl Sunday. They're clearing the way and letting the NFL shine, as they should, right? Don't want to get in the way of the NFL. King United says he's ready for an 8-hour stream. Nah, we ain't going to be here 8 hours, brother. I got things to do, but I will go through as many props as I've got good, solid information and research on. How about that? I think that's a fair compromise. Accolade Rhyme says first, second, or third, or fourth. I don't know, but thanks for being here, Accolade. Appreciate your support. Christy says, let's go Rams. Yeah, I'm riding with the Rams as well. Gang, I want the Rams to win, especially Matt Stafford. Guy's kind of been through it all right throughout his career. Injuries, bad teams. Now he's finally on a good team with a good coach, and I'd like to see Matthew Stafford get it done. King United's already dropping some props that he's liking. Francis Scott Key says, hey, A back to you, my friend. A back to you. Aaron Rodgers is in here. Unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers not in the Super Bowl, but sounds like the Green Bay Packers want to make Aaron Rodgers the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. So that would be amazing. Timothy Scott's in the building. 20. Stewart, good to see you. Kissa says, Rams? Yeah, I'm riding with the Rams as well. Another day on the internet. Is it crazy to say Cooper Kupp won't perform well today? Well, we'll get into that. I think Cooper Kupp is definitely going to be a very popular play. I think Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be a popular play. Just the Rams passing attack in general will be a very popular play, I think. Seeing a lot of people already on the Rams. Steven Donaldson says, double dimes from Discord here. What's up, Steve? Thanks for joining me, my man. Hopefully you had a pretty good day yesterday. Looks like a lot of people from the community did. Isaac's in the building. Let's go. Super Bowl CJ's in the building. I love that. Super Bowl CJ. I like that. I like that. Good morning to David. Giovanni's up in the building. Good morning to you, Thomas, a.k.a. Fred Dog. Thanks for coming into work on Sunday. You got it, brother. Anything I could do to try and help you folks. Drew Bree says, let's ride. Been waiting on the stream. Well, here it is. Here it is. I got busy yesterday, had family and friend obligations, real life stuff that I do. I can't be on here every single day. I can't completely forget about the friends and the family that have helped me along the way. So here we are. We took a day off yesterday, but now we're back on the grind. Percy's in the building. Good morning to you, Robert. What's happening to you as well? Milan George says, let's get this money. Hey, how about we do this? Drop a thumbs up if you received your $500 5-pick flex entry today. If you completed all 7 steps of the road to 56 on PrizePicks and you got your free $500 5-pick flex entry, drop a thumbs up. Let me see how many of you guys are riding with that 5-pick flex to win up to $5,000. How many of you guys completed the challenge? Let me know by leaving a thumbs up in the chat. All right. While you guys are doing that, let's go ahead and get down to business. All right. We're going to go through as many of these quarterback props as we can. I can't guarantee we're going to go through all of them. I'm only going to go through the ones that I have, like I said, good solid research, good solid data behind. These other ones, they're pretty degenerate type of player props. So take them at your own risk, these other ones. The ones I'm going to talk about will be ones that are backed by statistics, by projections, by research. And those are the ones that I would recommend you play. Not any of these other ones. You can play them, but again, do it for fun. Maybe sprinkle a little something light on it, but don't go crazy on them because there's a lot of weird ones out there, a lot of player props out there that we've never seen before. So, man, look at all the thumbs up. A lot of you guys are riding with the $5,000 $500 5-pick flex entry to win $5,000. There's a lot of you that went through the 7-step challenge. Loving it. Dylan says, let's get back all the money that we lost getting here. Let's go. Listen, you could win it all back in one night here with a good 5 out of 5 picks. So I'm going to try and help you, gang. I'm trying to help all of you with your player prop research. Let's get down to business. We've obviously got just 2 quarterbacks here. It's Matthew Stafford versus Joe Burrow. 2 of the best quarterbacks and the only 2 quarterbacks that we get to talk about today. So let's start things off here with Matthew Stafford at 280.5 passing yards. I've already alluded to this. I think that the Rams passing attack is probably going to be a very popular play across the industry today. Matthew Stafford, I have him projected for as many as 303 passing yards, so almost 304 passing yards. So compared that to the 280.5 line that we're seeing here on PrizePicks, I mean, that's a 20 to 25 yard difference. Also worth noting, Matthew Stafford out on your favorite sports books, he's at 281.5. 284.5 and as high as 285.5. So we are getting anywhere from 1 to 5 yards of value on PrizePicks, which may not seem like much, but I'll take any edge that I can get. Now we look at Matthew Stafford here across the last couple of games, 366 passing yards against a pretty tough Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. He has 337 passing yards against a pretty tough San Francisco 49ers defense. So now he's got the Cincinnati Bengals. I would not put them in the same league as the Bucs or the 49ers. I think it's going to be an easier matchup for Matt Stafford. You can already see here, according to the Fantasy Labs projection models, we're going to go ahead and switch this up. So they've got 2 models that they use. They use Sean Kerner's model, super sharp guy, by the way. If you don't follow Sean Kerner on Twitter, check out Sean Kerner, one of the sharpest NFL guys around, as is Chris Raybon. Both of those guys, Fantasy Labs guys. But what we'll do is we'll take their two models, we'll combine them into one, and we'll aggregate their models and get a consensus projection. So now that we've done that, you can see Matthew Stafford at 280.5 on the dot, which is exactly where he's at on PrizePicks today. So their consensus projection models have Matthew Stafford going for exactly 280.5. But the Blitz by Derek Carty, the other projection models that I hang my hat on, that I lean on and rely on, they like Matthew Stafford for over 303 passing yards. So for me, I would probably have to lean toward the over. Now, let's go look at this matchup here. We got ProFootballReference.com pulled up. We're looking at quarterbacks. We're looking at passing yards. We're going to go find the Cincinnati Bengals, gang, and they're giving up 263, we'll call it 264 passing yards per game this season to opposing signal callers, quarterbacks. So that is the sixth most. So in terms of matchup here, I think this is a very good matchup for Matthew Stafford. I would like to believe that the Rams passing attack is in a very good spot here against Cincinnati. Hopefully it's a shootout type of game, where there's lots of fireworks, lots of passing, lots of scoring going on. But game script for this one, I think, looks pretty good here for Matthew Stafford and this Los Angeles Rams team. So again, Cincinnati giving up the sixth most passing yards per game this season to opposing quarterbacks. So for me, final verdict, I'm going to lean toward the over on Matthew Stafford's passing yards at 280.5. So what about Joe Burrow, who's also up there at a pretty high number, 275.5? Well, if we look at the last 5 games for Joe Burrow, he's covered this in 3 out of 5 games, so 60% hit rate. We look at the last couple of games in particular, just 250 against Kansas City. All right, 348 against Tennessee, pretty big game there. 244 against the Vegas Raiders. So that's kind of been his path to the Super Bowl, so to speak. He's covered this 275.5 in just one game, and it was against Tennessee. So kind of a iffy looking last 3 games for Joe Burrow. I'll tell you this, though, 275.5 on PrizePicks, but I've got him at 276.5 out on your favorite sports books. I'm seeing him at 279.5, 280.5, and even as high as 281.5. So we are getting anywhere from 5 to 6 yards of value compared to some of the other sports books and sites out there. So looking at the projections that I have for Joe Burrow, I've got him projected for over 300 yards, 300.8. Let's round it up, call it 301. According to the Blitz, they like him to go for more than 300 yards. And if we look here at the consensus models, kind of odd, but they're exactly in line on Joe Burrow's passing yard prop as well, 275.5. Do you think PrizePicks maybe has access to the Fantasy Labs and Action Labs models? I'm just saying, guys, 280.5 on Stafford, 275.5 on Joe Burrow. They're pretty much exactly the same as Fantasy Labs. But nonetheless, I'd probably be leaning over on Joe Burrow here. Let's go ahead and take a look at this matchup against the Los Angeles Rams. They're giving up about 261 passing yards per game, which makes them the team giving up the 9th most to opposing quarterbacks this season, 9th most passing yards. So I don't know, maybe I'm off my rocker, but I think both of these guys have a really strong chance to go over their passing yard prop, and the Blitz by Derek Carty and Fantasy Labs kind of seem to be in line with that sentiment. So we got passing yards out of the way. Let's look at some of these other quarterback props. What else do we have here? Passing touchdowns. Both guys are currently projected for 2 passing touchdowns over on PrizePicks. So let's take a look and see what I have in terms of projections for passing touchdowns for each QB. I can tell you this, that on the Blitz by Derek Carty, they've got Joe Burrow projected for 1.6 passing touchdowns. Now, obviously that's closer to 2 passing touchdowns than it is 1, but they like the slight under on Joe Burrow here in terms of passing touchdown projections. For Matthew Stafford, a little bit higher on him. I've got him at 1.9 passing touchdowns. So I think he's got more of a realistic chance to get the job done at 2 or more passing touchdowns. Obviously, Joe Burrow, he's got a nice stud running back behind him, Joe Mixon, who might find a rushing touchdown. Maybe that cuts into Joe Burrow's production, but either way, This number of 2 passing touchdowns looking like a pretty sharp number. Let's see what we have here over on Fantasy Labs. I got Joe Burrow projected for 1.8 and Matthew Stafford projected for 2.1. So they're pretty much in line. The Blitz and Fantasy Labs, both sites kind of agree that Matthew Stafford has a better chance or more upside to throw for more than 2 passing touchdowns. Stafford projected for more passing touchdowns on both the Blitz and Fantasy Labs than Joe Burrow is. So there you go. Let's go take a look at the matchup for both QBs real quick. In terms of passing touchdowns allowed per game to opposing quarterbacks, let's see who's given up the most here. So we'll go down the list here. Cincinnati giving up, let's see, about 1.53 passing touchdowns per game to opposing QBs. So again, just another reason for you to kind of lean more toward the over, as they are giving up more than 1.5 passing touchdowns on average to opposing quarterbacks. And then we go all the way down to the bottom of the list here, and you see the Los Angeles Rams a bit more stingy in terms of the amount of passing touchdowns allowed per game to QBs. Just 0.94, less than 1 passing touchdown allowed per game to opposing quarterbacks. So that's probably what's factoring in to these models, to these projections, why they like Stafford more than they like Joe Burrow to throw for 2 or more touchdowns. So that would be kind of the lean for me. Let's see what else we got here for these quarterback props. We've talked some passing yards. I think I like both quarterbacks over passing yards. Passing touchdowns, I'd probably favor Matthew Stafford according to the projection models that we're using here. Do we dare touch any of these other ones? I mean, maybe we look at pass completions. Pass completions haven't been bad. We can look at Matthew Stafford first. He's at 24 completed passes. It seems a little low to me. But let's look and see what the Blitz and what Fantasy Labs has to say. They got Matthew Stafford going for 25 completed passes. So they actually like him to go over 24 pass completions. He has gone over this number in 2 out of 3 playoff games. He had 28 completed passes against Tampa Bay, 31 against San Francisco. So has a pretty good hit rate here throughout the course of the playoff run. We go over to Fantasy Labs and we look at the completed passes for Stafford. They got it projected for 24.1. So again, a slight lean toward the over. At 24.5 passing completions, you see the betting public is taking the under at 24.5, which is probably why PrizePicks has him down at 24. But for me, I'd probably lean toward the over on Matthew Stafford, who again has covered this in his last 2 games and the last 2 out of 3 overall. Let's look at Joe Burrow here, who's at 24 completed passes. For the projections on Burrow, I've got him completing 25.3 passes according to the Blitz. So they like him to complete slightly more passes than Matthew Stafford. We look at the projections here on Fantasy Labs, 23.9, pretty close to 24. We could go ahead and call it 24. Now we're seeing some interesting action on this prop at 24.5 pass completions. We're seeing them being bet over out on DK Sportsbook. We're seeing them bet under at 24.5 pass completions on MGM. So seeing the betting public kind of going 2 different ways here on the Joe Burrow passing completions. But both guys look like they're projected to go over 24 completed passes. Slight edge or nod would be to Joe Burrow for the over versus Matthew Stafford. Probably like Joe Burrow a little bit more. Other than passing completions, what else do we have? Do I have anything on pass attempts? Let me take a look. I do have some projections for pass attempts thanks to the Blitz. So let's look at both of them here. We got Matthew Stafford at 35.5. 35.5 for Stafford. I've got him projected, according to the Blitz, 37.7. So that's 2.2 pass attempts different. Now you can see there's a correlation here, obviously. His pass attempts the last 2 games have gone over. His completed passes have also gone over against Tampa Bay and San Francisco, respectively. And then that also ties into the passing yards like we talked about earlier. That also has hit in the last 2 games for Stafford. So the passing games for Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams has been really good here over the last couple of playoff games. So again, the lean would be toward the over, have him going for more than 2 pass completions over where he's at right now at 35.5. Let's see if I have anything for pass attempts. Boom. I do. And according to Fantasy Labs, they got Stafford at 35.8 pass attempts. So two different sites, two very trusted projection models, both the Blitz and Fantasy Labs, both like Matthew Stafford to go over 35.5 projected pass attempts. So I think Stafford over looks like a good move. What about Joe Burrow? He's a little bit higher. He's at 36.5. Stafford's at 35.5. Joe Burrow, 36.5. I've got him projected for 36.9. So a little bit less of an edge on Joe Burrow, being that he's one pass attempt higher than Matthew Stafford is. But Burrow's projected for about 36.9. Let's call it 37 pass attempts. So a little bit of an edge. He's gone over 36.5 pass attempts in 4 out of his last 5 games, including 2 straight. So maybe don't trust the passing yards quite as much. This looks like the prop that has been hitting the best so far out of the ones that we've looked at for Joe Burrow. Out of his passing yards, out of the passing completions, I think this has the highest hit rate out of the 3 that we've looked at so far. Now the models over on Fantasy Labs, they've got him at 35 pass attempts, which is obviously less than 36.5. So the Blitz likes the over on Joe Burrow. Fantasy Labs likes the under on Joe Burrow. So we have two projection models that are torn, that are split here. They do not align. They do not agree on how many pass attempts Joe Burrow will have today. But there you go. I'm bringing you what I can find here. In terms of quarterback completion percentage, QB rating, like I said, those I will not get into. I just don't have any solid information. They are very much fly by the seat of your pants, kind of going into it blind, going into it dark. So I don't want to get into them. I only want to talk about the ones where I've got some good, solid information. So other than that, I mean, the only other thing that we could look at for these QBs, as far as I know here, is Matthew Stafford's rushing yards, Joe Burrow's rushing yards. So we can look at both real quick. So we'll go over to the rushing yard category. Matthew Stafford, I have him projected for 5 rushing yards. He's covered this 4.5 rushing yards in 3 straight games. So you could take Matthew Stafford as an over for rushing yards. According to the Blitz, let's see what I have Matthew Stafford for rushing yards there. The Blitz has Stafford going for 4.1, so slightly under 4.5. So we're kind of torn here. Once again, the projection model's not in full agreement on what they have for Matthew Stafford's projected rushing yards. So there you go. That's one to consider. Let's look at Joe Burrow's rushing yards. He's at 9.5, which seems kind of like a tall task, a pretty big number, right? But over the last 5 games, he's covered this in 3 out of 5, a 60% hit rate. 60% hit rate for Joe Burrow at 9.5 rushing yards. I've got him projected at 10.2 according to the Blitz, which is more than 9.5. And then you can see Burrow's at 9 projected rushing yards here. So they're not loving the rushing yards for Joe Burrow quite as much according to Fantasy Labs. So I don't know, I typically don't play quarterback rushing yard props. I mean, they just seem so wonky to me, so volatile. They could go a lot of different ways. So I'm probably not going to touch either one of those, but I figure some of you out there probably would play them. So I wanted to talk about them. And then last but not least, we could talk some fantasy props for both of these guys. Matthew Stafford at 19 projected fantasy points. He has gone over this number in 4 straight games, 4 out of 5 overall, so an 80% hit rate at covering 19 fantasy points. So I've got the Blitz pulled up here. We could take a look at Matthew Stafford and his projected fantasy points. I got him going for 21 fantasy points, but we have to make sure that when we look at these fantasy points projections that doesn't factor in a 300-yard passing game, because unlike DraftKings, for instance, PrizePicks, you don't get a bonus for when a quarterback goes over 300 passing yards. So let's go take a look and see if the Blitz is accounting for a 300 passing yard game from Stafford. And they are. They got Stafford at 304 passing yards. So that would factor in a 3-point bonus, which means this 21.04 fantasy points should really be 18.04 fantasy points if we take that 3-point bonus away. PrizePicks and DraftKings, as far as how they score football, NFL, Exactly the same, other than the 3-point bonus that you get for going over 300 passing yards or over 100 rushing or over 100 receiving yards. So I'm glad that I caught that. So the real projection here for Matthew Stafford would be about 18 fantasy points according to the Blitz, which would be a slight under. PrizePicks a little high potentially at 19 fantasy points. Same thing with Joe Burrow. He's at 18 fantasy points over on PrizePicks according to the Blitz here. They do have Burrow going for 301 passing yards. So we got to go over here to the fantasy points projections. And we got to take 21.28. We got to take 3 points away from that. So he's actually at 18.2. So the slight favorite to go over for Joe Burrow. So maybe you go over on Burrow and potentially under on Stafford. But if you feel some type of way about going under on Stafford, then you can just fade that projection. But nonetheless, they like the over on Burrow, slight under on Stafford according to the Blitz projection models. So that's it, gang. I mean, that's pretty much the ins and outs of, quarterback props that I have any type of information, projections, or anything on. So we'll leave quarterbacks at that. We've covered the passing yards. We've covered the fantasy scores. We've covered the pass completions, pass attempts, passing touchdowns. I think we've pretty much covered it all. If I missed anything, though, as far as quarterback props, you can always leave a question for me at the end of the stream, and I'll be happy to try and dig into that further. So now that we went through the full gambit of ways that you could play quarterback props, the leans for the overs, the leans for the unders, let's go ahead and take a look at some running backs here. And we'll start things off by looking at running back rush yards. So we're going to have the likes of Cam Akers at 54.5. We got Joe Mixon, 60.5. We've got Samaje Perine at 2.5 rushing yards. Man, does that look good. Telling me this guy can't find at least 3 rushing yards? And then we got Sony Michel at 15.5 rushing yards. Now, chat, you're gonna have to let me know. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Darrell Henderson is available for the Los Angeles Rams. Am I right or wrong on that? I thought I heard a report that Darrell Henderson would be available to play today for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I don't know how much he's going to play, if he does play, how many snaps or touches Darrell Henderson might get, but that could cut into the production of somebody like Cam Akers potentially, or Sony Michel potentially. Kind of a wild card. They don't have any Darrell Henderson props up on the board as far as I can see, but that's something worth considering, worth factoring in at least when you're considering guys like Cam Akers and Sony Michel. All right, Aaron Rodgers coming through with the clutch information. He says that Darrell Henderson is available to play today for the Rams. Perfect. Lenakila says Perine is used for throwing downs. Right. He's more their pass catching option, obvious passing situations. But as far as throwing a dart on a gamble, 3 rushing yards, like maybe he could get it done. Maybe he could find 3 rushing yards. I don't know. Anyway, let's go ahead and get down to business here and talk about some of these running backs. We'll start things off with Cam Akers because he's at 54.5. We've got kind of, like I said, the wild card in Darrell Henderson. Maybe he plays. Maybe he gets some snaps. Maybe he gets some touches. He's available. He's available to play. But how much will he play? That is the question. So Cam Akers at 54.5 projected rushing yards. I've got him out on your favorite sports books at 63.5. Even as high as 65.5. So PrizePicks coming in at a pretty low number here at 54.5. We're looking at 9 to 10 yards difference. Now, according to the Blitz by my man Derek Carty, I've got him projected for 54.8 rushing yards, which is slightly more than the 54.5 line we're getting him at. He's only covered 54.5 rushing yards, though, in 1 out of his last 5 games. So that's just a 20% hit rate. Over the course of his playoff run, he's gone 1 for 3. 48 against Tampa Bay, 48 against San Francisco. 2 very tough run defenses. So let's head back over to Fantasy Labs here. We will pull up the rushing yards for Cam Akers. I got him projected for 62. According to the Sean Kerner, Chris Raybon model, we put both of those guys together and we get the consensus of 62 rushing yards. So the blitz slightly over the 54.5. Fantasy Labs liking Cam Akers to go over 54.5 rushing yards, a bit more at 62. So both lean toward the over on Cam Akers. We could dig into this just a little bit further by going over to ProFootballReference.com. We'll click the running back position. We don't really need to do this because these projection models already factor in things like this, but I like to just kind of show you for a visual representation just how many rushing yards these teams are both giving up to the running back position. So we got to go find the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals giving up about 83.1 rushing yards per game. You could see where that ranks them kind of like middle of the pack, but down toward the bottom. So they're actually not a very bad run defense in their own right. So 83.1, but really the question is, Cam Akers, Sony Michel, and Darrell Henderson, kind of a three-headed monster in the backfield for the Los Angeles Rams. How will the carries, how will the touches be divvied up amongst these three tailbacks? Gonna have to wait and see. Not real sure. So for me, I don't know that I'm loving Cam Akers today. I know the projection models have him as a slight favorite to go over. I just don't know if I want to go there. I think maybe we can go, somewhere else. Maybe this guy. Maybe we go here instead. Joe Mixon at 60.5 rushing yards. Now, out on the various sports books, we're seeing a pretty sharp line actually here on PrizePicks. Typically, we get a couple of yards of value, few yards of value on PrizePicks, meaning PrizePicks, when they set their lines for things like rushing yards, passing yards, receiving yards, typically they come in a little bit lower, but they're pretty sharp here with the rest of the industry in terms of this rushing yard line for Joe Mixon. I'm seeing Mixon at 58.5 on some sites. I'm seeing him at 60.5 on most sites. So obviously PrizePicks has him at 60.5. Let's take a look at the projection models and see where they've got Joe Mixon landing today. I've got Mixon projected for about 75 rushing yards according to the blitz, which is about 15 yards more than where he's at currently on PrizePicks. So that's a pretty big edge. That's about a 24% edge in our favor. Not bad. Now let's go look at Fantasy Labs. They've got Joe Mixon going for 65 rushing yards. So they also kind of agree that maybe Joe Mixon at 60.5 is a little too low, a touch too light. Both sites, both projection models agreeing that the over should be the way that we think about going on Joe Mixon today. Now, just like we did for Cam Akers, let's go ahead and take a look at the matchup here. The Los Angeles Rams, pretty tough run defense, slightly tougher than the Cincinnati Bengals. They're one ranking higher or better than the Cincinnati Bengals against opposing running backs. They're giving up about 78 to 79 rushing yards per game to opposing running backs. Now, obviously, Joe Mixon's the clear-cut bell cow. He is the workhorse for the Cincinnati Bengals. We don't really have to question who's going to get the touches. It's a pretty clear picture. It's going to be Joe Mixon as the lead back. But then you've also got this guy, Samaje Perine, who has a fantastic beard, by the way. Shout out to Samaje Perine and his beard game. As a beard wearer myself, thoroughly impressed with this man's ability to grow facial hair. We got Samaje Perine at 2.5 rushing yards. I kind of hinted at it earlier. I was like, man, 2.5. This guy's just got to fall forward for 3 rushing yards and we hit. But when you open up the game logs, you're like, dang, he ain't really carrying the ball like that. He had 4 rushing yards against Kansas City. The only time in the last 5 games that he's actually gone over 2.5 rushing yards. So this is definitely a dice roll here. It is by no means a lock, but you know me, nothing's ever really a lock. As good as anything looks, it's never really a lock. Anyway, Samaje Perine at 2.5 rushing yards. I got him at 3.5 and even as high as 5.5 rushing yards on some sites. 3.5 to 5.5 rushing yards on some other sports books. Now, as far as his projection, I've got him at 5.5 projected rushing yards, which is about 3 yards higher. Now, this is going to sound like a big edge, but that's 59% different. But when you're talking small numbers like 3, 4, and 5 yards, you get big edges like that. So anyway, the blitz likes Samaje Perine to find 3 or more rushing yards. Let's take a look at him here on Fantasy Labs. They've got him projected for 3, which is exactly what he needs. at least 3 yards or more to hit the over. So both models liking the over on Samaje Perine, but yeah, I mean, you could look at the game logs here and see for yourself, it is by no means a strong play. It is a degenerate gambling type of play. The only other running back that we could discuss in terms of rushing yards is Sony Michel. But again, as I kind of alluded to earlier with Cam Akers, I don't know what's going to happen with this backfield. Darrell Henderson had a fantastic year before kind of getting banged up, and Cam Akers returning and taking back the throne, so to speak. Sony Michel had his moments, in the sun where he had some high spots. He's had some pretty good games throughout the course of the season. So I don't know that I want to go here with the Rams backfield, but for those of you who do want to go here, Sony Michel's at 15.5 projected rushing yards. Out on the different sports books, I'm seeing him at 20.5. He's at pretty much 20.5 everywhere else other than PrizePicks. So 5 yards more out on the sports books than on PrizePicks, meaning we're getting about 5 yards of value here on this prop. Now, over the last 5 games, Sony Michel has covered 15.5 in 4 out of 5, so an 80% hit rate. The last 3, in other words, his 3 playoff games, he's covered this prop in 2 out of 3, so about a 67% hit rate. Barely got over the hump here against San Francisco with 16 rushing yards. So again, I kind of put him in the same bucket as I do Samaje Perine, guys who are more of your passing down running backs, guys who are out there to catch footballs rather than to tote the rock. And I kind of think maybe Sony Michel will be used exclusively in a pass-catching type of role, used less in a run role, especially if Darrell Henderson's 100% healthy and ready to go. I could see Sony Michel getting maybe less carries and the workload being split between Cam Akers and the vet Darrell Henderson. But anyway, Sony Michel's projection today, I've got him at 21.7. Let's call it 22 rushing yards versus the 15.5. So pretty nice edge on that prop. And then if we go back over here to Fantasy Labs, we've got him projected for 24 rushing yards. So 24 on Fantasy Labs, and then they've got Sony Michel projected for about 22 according to the Blitz. So both sites do favor the over on Michel, but for me, I don't think I want to touch this Rams backfield. A little sketched out by it. I just don't know, what's going to happen. I never know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen for sure, right? I just don't feel as confident in any of these guys. So that's just my take. That's just how I'm approaching the Rams rushing game. Probably not going to go there personally. Let's look at some receiving yard props for some of these tailbacks. Cam Akers is up at 14.5. We open up the last 5 games for Akers. You can see he's covered this prop in 3 out of his last 5 games, so that's a 60% hit rate. Let me go ahead and pull up the projections for receiving yards for these running backs and see what we got. You're saying Sony Michel is at 18.5. What was that for his rushing? Let's refresh. Maybe something's changed since I started the stream here. Yes. I guess people are taking the over on Sony Michel. I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, good catch. Thanks for pointing that out. Now that makes me want to potentially take the under on Sony Michel at 18.5. Maybe we go under on him now that they've given him a little bumpy bump. Anyway, Cam Akers at 14.5. I've got him projected for more than 14.5. I've got him at 16.8, which is a slight edge. Not a huge difference. I'm seeing him at 14.5, 15.5, and 16.5 out on 3 different sports books. So we are getting a bit of value here on Cam Akers at 14.5 over on PrizePicks. Again, they're coming in at a slightly lower number. As far as his projection on Fantasy Labs, we got him at 15.6, so a slight favor to go over. And then you can kind of see how people are betting this prop out on various sports books. At 14.5, they're taking the over, minus 125. Over here at minus 120 odds. At 16.5, not really seeing any action. Even at 15.5, people are taking the over, minus 125. So Cam Akers at 14.5, I mean, maybe you take the over on him. Other running backs here, Joe Mixon, 25.5. He has obviously hit this prop in 5 straight games. That's a 100% hit rate. You look at the last 3 games, especially during this playoff run for Cincinnati, 28 receiving yards, 51 against Tennessee, 27 against Kansas City. So I have a feeling that this will be a popular pick. A lot of people will be flocking toward the green. 5 straight games where he's covered. That's a lot of green. So Joe Mixon, I've got him at 25.5 on PrizePicks, but he's at 24.5 and 25.5, even as high as 26.5 out on a number of different sports books. So PrizePicks kind of taking the middle number. We're seeing lows of 24.5, highs of 26.5. So they're taking the middle number. As far as projections go, 26.8. So about 27 receiving yards. Not a huge edge, but a slight edge toward the over. So they like Mixon to go over. Let's go ahead and take a look at the receiving yard projections for Mixon here. 24.4, so they like him to go under. At 24.5 receiving yards, we're seeing him being bet over, but at 25.5, we're seeing him bet under. So despite the 5 games in a row in which he's covered 25.5, the betting public, at least on one sports book, is taking the under on Joe Mixon at minus 125 odds. So kind of interesting there. I think he's going to be a very popular play. Like I said, most people will just look at how many green bars are in his last 5 game logs here on PrizePicks. They'll look at those green bars and say, yeah, why wouldn't I take the over? You know, I get it. Go with the guys with the high hit rates. Let's look at the Rams defense here and see how many receiving yards they've given up to opposing running backs this season. Maybe that'll give us a little bit of a better idea of which way we should be going here on Joe Mixon. Now they're giving up about 37 receiving yards per game to opposing running backs. You can kind of see where that puts them like smack dab in the middle of the league. So it's not an overly difficult matchup, but it's not a real easy matchup either. Kind of an average matchup for Mixon. So I think, obviously, for good reason, he will be a very popular play, being that he's hit in 5 straight games. Other running backs and their receiving yard props. We got Samaje Perine. We can look in on him real quick. I've got him projected for over 14 receiving yards, so that would be an over option. And then as far as Perine over on Fantasy Labs, we got him projected for 8.7, so a slight favorite to go over there. His line is 8.5 on PrizePicks. He's at 10.5 out on most sports books. So we are getting about 2 yards of value on Samaje Perine. And the other guy would be this dude, Sony Michel. His playoff run in terms of receiving yards, not very good. 0 against Arizona, -4 against Tampa Bay, and -4 against San Francisco. So kind of hard to trust Sony Michel here, right? Especially with Darrell Henderson coming back in, getting more snaps, more touches, taking away some of those looks that Michel and Akers would get otherwise. I've got Sony Michel projected for 9.3 receiving yards on the blitz. And I got Michel projected for 5.3 receiving yards on Fantasy Labs. So for me, probably going to fade this one, as I will probably do with most of the Rams backfield and their props. My man David's coming through. He says, let's remember that these lines are set for Rams at 4.5-point favorites and an implied total of 48.5 points from this game. If you have conviction on a side or total, it's just another piece to consider. Thank you so much for the super chat. By the way, David, I appreciate you dropping that piece of information for the people to consider. Isaac's bringing up a good point. Tyler Higbee may be injured. Do we experiment with Kendall Blanton? We will definitely check in on some Kendall Blanton. Joe says that Joe Mixon will be used to help block a lot too. Burrow won't have much time, if any at all. Mixon won't be the first check down due to blocking. Would take that into consideration and look at like a slot receiver like Tyler Boyd or the tight end CJ Uzomah. I think I said his name right. Uzomah? Anyway, those are some very good points. I'm enjoying the conversation. You guys are dropping some like really insightful stuff in here. Some very insightful stuff in here. Appreciate the super chats. I appreciate everybody joining and contributing to this conversation. Accolade, we'll check in on some touchdowns here in just a moment. So we've talked running backs and their rushing yards, running backs and their receiving yards. Oh, do we want to look at any running back receptions? I mean, I guess we could. I typically don't play receptions a whole lot just because I don't really ever see any big major edges on any of these guys. But let me see the guys who are standing out the most. I've got Samaje Perine. I'm just going to buzz through these real quick. I got Samaje Perine projected for 1.7 receptions on the blitz. So that would be a lean toward the over. He's projected at exactly 1.5 according to Fantasy Labs. Who else we got on here? Cam Akers at 2. I got him projected for like right at 2 on the blitz. So not seeing much of an edge on Cam Akers. He's at 2.4 over on Fantasy Labs. At 2.5, betting public smashing the under, minus 160 on his receptions. Joe Mixon's at 3.5. I've got him projected for 3.6, so a slight edge on the over. He's at exactly 3.5 on Fantasy Labs. And that's about it, man. Like I said, I don't typically play a whole lot of reception props. Let's look at some of these other ones here, though. Fantasy score for these running backs. Let's take a look at those real quick. We got Akers at 10. Let's see if I've got any projections for these dudes. The only fantasy projection that I have right now is for Joe Mixon, who's at 16 fantasy points. I have him projected for 19.2 fantasy points. And that does not factor in a 100-yard rushing game. So 19.2 fantasy points. So we would be leaning toward the over on Joe Mixon. He's covered this in 2 out of his last 5 games. Otherwise, what else do we have? We talked about rush attempts. Do I have anything on rush attempts? Doesn't look like it. Nope. Nothing on rush attempts. It's like I'll kind of skip over that one. How about receiving touchdowns? No. How about anytime touchdowns? There they are. So we got Cam Akers or Joe Mixon to choose from here. Let's look at Cam Akers real quick. He has failed to score a touchdown in 5 straight games. Don't know if I love Cam Akers to find the end zone finally. What are you guys thinking? Are you on Cam Akers to punch one in? Could be a receiving touchdown, could be a rushing touchdown on these anytime touchdowns. Don't know if I love that. Joe Mixon, though, I can give you a little projection on him. He's projected for 0.6 rushing touchdowns and 0.18 receiving touchdowns. So when you combine those two numbers, that's about 0.78 projected anytime touchdowns. So he could be an option for you. If you wanted to lean toward the over on Joe Mixon, you could. If we look at the Rams here in terms of touchdowns allowed, 0.65 rushing touchdowns allowed, about 0.18 receiving touchdowns allowed. So you combine those two numbers, that's like 0.83. 0.83 any kind of touchdown to running backs allowed. So I wouldn't mind you taking a shot on Joe Mixon over 0.5 anytime touchdowns. Otherwise, buzzing through the rest of these props, I'm just not seeing anything else worth really talking about in terms of running back props. So let's look at some receiving yards. Let's talk about some of these wide receivers, these tight ends. Obviously, this dude's going to be super popular. I've already seen people locking Cooper Kupp into a lot of their lineups. Into a lot of their entries, I should say, not lineups, entries over on PrizePicks. As far as projections on Cooper Kupp, I got him going for about 122 receiving yards on the blitz. He's at 102.5, so we're looking at about a 20-yard difference between the projections on the blitz and where he's at on PrizePicks. Now his line out on your various sportsbooks, 104.5, 105.5, even as high as 110.5. So we are getting a pretty friendly number here. at just 102.5. He's covered this in 2 out of his last 3 games, all those playoff games obviously. Went for 183 against the Bucks, 142 against the San Francisco 49ers. And now he's facing off against the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's go look at Fantasy Labs and see what type of projections we have for Cooper Kupp's receiving yards. I got him at about 108. So the 102.5 just looking a little too low. Both projection models, 122 on the Blitz, 108 on Fantasy Labs. They both agree that the over should be the way that we should be thinking about playing Cooper Kupp. Now the betting public at 104.5, they're taking the over, minus 125 to go over. Even at 105.5, we're seeing people take the over on Cooper Kupp. So we're seeing the betting public take the over. We're seeing projections, both projection models, liking the over on Cooper Kupp. So the over would be the way that I would go too, based on everything that I'm seeing. Now, in terms of the Cincinnati Bengals and receiving yards allowed to the wide receiver position, they're giving up about 155.6 receiving yards per game to opposing wideouts, which puts them like right around the middle of the pack. So not overly challenging, not overly easy, just kind of average matchup for Cooper Kupp. But yeah, I would have to take the over on Cooper Kupp. Otherwise, I'm fading it. If I'm not taking the over, I'm definitely not going to go under on him. I probably would just fade it otherwise. This dude right here, probably going to be super popular as well. Jamar Chase, 77.5 on PrizePicks. I'm seeing him at 78.5, 88, 80.5. So we're getting a couple of yards of value here at just 77.5. I've got him projected for 88.7, so about 11 yards more according to the Blitz. They like him to go over. Last 3 games, playoff games, 116 against Vegas, 109 against Tennessee. But then just 54 against Kansas City, kind of a down game for him. Now, he did have 266 against Kansas City back on January 2nd. Completely crazy. You know, this dude can catch one bomb for like 70, 80 yards, right? At any given moment, at any point in the game, he could get loose downfield and catch a bomb. So, yeah, Jamar Chase definitely going to be in play for me in terms of an over. The Blitz likes him to go over. However, Fantasy Labs does not like him to go over. They got him at 72 projected receiving yards, slightly under the 77.5 by about 5.5 yards. Kind of interesting. Not seeing a lot of action on his player prop lines of 78.5 receiving yards or 80.5. We're seeing even money actually on Jamar Chase. Looking at the matchup against the Rams, the Los Angeles Rams, they're giving up about, where they at? I just saw them. Oh, they're giving up 173.5 receiving yards per game to opposing wideouts, which is the 4th most in the league. So I would say a lot of these Bengals receivers should definitely be considered. Jamar Chase, somebody in the chat mentioned Tyler Boyd. Looking at your comments here. Oh, you guys are cracking me up. Anyway, I think it was Joey Harrington mentioned possibly going to some Tyler Boyd. So we'll take a look at Tyler Boyd in just a minute. But Odell Beckham Jr. at 60.5 receiving yards. I see a lot of people loving OBJ today. 60.5 on PrizePicks. He's at 63 and 65 receiving yards out on most sports books. So again, PrizePicks coming in with a soft number of 60.5. I've got him projected for about 63 on the Blitz. And he's at about 57.3 according to Fantasy Labs. So the Blitz likes him to go over. Fantasy Labs likes him to go under. I typically like to look for props where both models agree. In this case, they disagree. So I may not go here, but just to tell you this, 63.5, we are seeing the public taking the over at 63.5. So if they're taking it at 63.5, then, you know, we should probably be thinking about taking the over at 60.5. He's covered this in 2 straight games. 2 straight. Let's buzz through the rest of these. T. Higgins, 66.5. He's covered this in his last 2 games. 2 out of 3 overall. but he hasn't played since January 30th, so he's going to be kind of one of those tricky ones. We're not sure what to expect, right, from T. Higgins. His projection, 81.1. 81.1 versus 66.5, gang. Pretty big difference there. Pretty big difference there. About 25 yards different. Take that back. 15 yards different. Sorry. Bad math. So T. Higgins could definitely be an option. He's at 67.5 over on Fantasy Labs. So both sites liking the over on T. Higgins. We're seeing the betting public take T. Higgins over at 69.5 on two different books. At 75.5 on one book, he is being bet under at minus 125. So I like that as a good sign, a good signal that at 69.5 that the public's taking the over on T. Higgins. So I think 66.5 definitely worth a shot, definitely worth a look. Van Jefferson, 28.5. I've got Van Jefferson projected for about 35, 36. So a little bit of an edge there on Van Jefferson. He had gone 4 straight games at covering 28.5 receiving yards. Kind of came to a screeching halt against San Francisco with just 9 against San Francisco. So not so good of a last game there for Van Jefferson. If we take a look at the projections on Fantasy Labs, I got him at 29.4 there. Now the public at 32.5 are betting the over. 30.5 betting the over. So at 28.5, if they're betting the over at those higher numbers, we should be taking the over at 28.5, or at least considering it if you're wanting to play Van Jefferson. Here's Tyler Boyd. We talked about him earlier. Last 4 games have not been good. He's went under 39.5 receiving yards in 4 out of his last 5. The last time he did go over was against Baltimore back on December 26th. Mr. Joey Harrington, though, he's liking some Tyler Boyd, and I will tell you this, that the Blitz also likes Tyler Boyd for about 51 receiving yards today. About 51. Fantasy Labs has Boyd at 41.1. So both models favoring the over on Tyler Boyd. The public at 42.5 taking the under. At 45.5, obviously going to take the under there. But he's at 39.5, which makes for a little bit more of an interesting decision that we have to make. So there's Tyler Boyd for you. We've only got a couple of tight ends. Let's just talk about them while they're here. CJ, from one CJ to the next. What can we expect from Mr. Uzomah? Let's go take a look. His projection for receiving yards, 32. He's at 26.5. So he's at 32 on the blitz, 26.5 here on PrizePicks. I got him projected for about 27 over on Fantasy Labs. So both sites agree that the over on Uzomah looks like a good way to go. Or Uzomah. However you like to say it. However you want to put the emphasis on his name. 25.5 people are betting the over. They're betting the over at 25.5, but we're getting him at 26.5. To compare that for you, 29.5, the public smashing the under on him. Let's go look at the matchup. Tight ends. We'll go to per game stats, and we'll look at the receiving yards that the Rams are giving up to the tight end position per game this season. The Los Angeles Rams giving up over 51 receiving yards per game to the tight end position, which is kind of like right in the middle of the pack. Kind of an average matchup from my man CJ. C. Jizzle. Otherwise, Kendall Blanton, the only other tight end that we can talk about here. Kendall Blanton I have projected for about 39.6 receiving yards. So that's like 10 more. They have him projected for 10 more receiving yards than where he is at currently on PrizePicks at 29.5. See if I've got a projection for Blanton here. I got him projected for 27.1 on Fantasy Labs. So again, one of these other props where the blitz and Fantasy Labs kind of split, kind of torn. One site likes him to go over, the other likes him to go under. What about the betting public? Well, we're seeing even money on his receiving yards props across 4 different sports books. No overs, no unders, just even money across the board. So not seeing anything yet on Kendall Blanton. Looking at the matchup for him, though, going up against Cincinnati, Cincinnati is giving up the fifth most receiving yards. We talked about Tyler Higbee not being available for the Rams. Kendall Blanton could definitely be in play here and is in a very good matchup. So if you wanted to take a shot on Kendall Blanton going for at least 30 receiving yards, I can't be mad at that. I ain't mad at you. The Timothy, I'm not sure which site you're asking about. I've got a number of different sites pulled up. This is the Blitz by Derek Carty. This is Fantasy Labs, which has the Action Labs player prop tool built into it. This site is free. It's called ProFootballReference.com. Fantasy Labs and Action Labs is not free. It is premium. It's a premium site you have to pay for. Pro Football Reference, totally free. And then you could even use StatMuse to dig in even further. Haven't had to use it today, but always have it on hand. And then this is obviously PrizePicks. So there you go. So Blanton, again, with Higbee potentially being out, Blanton could step into a much larger role. He's in a very great spot here against the Cincinnati Bengals, who are giving up the 5th most receiving yards per game to the tight end position. So this could be one to kind of keep your eye out on if Tyler Higbee is truly out. How confident am I on Cooper Kupp's receiving yards? Listen, if I was going to put my money on anybody today, it would be Cooper Kupp. He's probably my favorite receiver on the board today. What do you guys think, gang? Do you think Cooper Kupp is the best receiving option out on the board? I think he is. I mean, he's probably the one that I feel most safe with, most comfortable with. Dude's just had an amazing season. Like I said, just really hard not to trust the guy. We'll quickly buzz through some of these reception props for your various pass catchers, your wide receivers, your tight ends. Let's look at those real quick. Won't spend too much time on those. Let's see if there's any standouts here. I got Cooper Kupp projected for about 9.1 receptions. So if you wanted to take the over on Cooper Kupp, that could be a look. He's projected for 8.5 over on Fantasy Labs. So even at 8, I wouldn't be mad at you taking the over. Both projection models liking the over on Cooper Kupp. He has gone over in 2 straight games, 2 out of 3 playoff games as well. So I would lean toward the over on Cooper Kupp. Jamar Chase, I have him projected for right at 6. So not seeing much of an edge for Chase. He's at 5.2 on Fantasy Labs. At 5.5 receptions, the public smashing the over, minus 130, minus 150 respectively. Other receptions to consider, maybe we go Odell Beckham Jr. I've got him projected for about 4.9, which is really close to 5. So not seeing anything like in terms of a huge edge on Odell. He's at 4.9 over on Fantasy Labs. T. Higgins, he's at 5.7 according to the Blitz. 5.2 according to Fantasy Labs, but at 5.5, they are betting the under pretty heavily, minus 140, minus 145. So that's why PrizePicks went ahead and bumped him down. Van Jefferson at 2 receptions. That kind of seems interesting, just right off the top of the dome. Now, the Blitz has him at 2.6. So for me, maybe I lean toward the over on Van Jefferson here. He's gone for 2 or more receptions in 80% of his last 5 games. So 4 out of 5 at 2 or more. Has only actually covered 2 receptions in 1 game, which was against Baltimore back on January 2nd. But Van Jefferson, maybe you take a shot on the over and he finds a 3rd reception for you. At 2.5 receptions, the public betting the over at 2.5. So there's a little value here in Van Jefferson at a 2 reception prop. Tyler Boyd is at 4. I've got him at 4.3 on the Blitz. Got him at 4 on Fantasy Labs. And then we'll look at the tight ends. Uzoma, Blanton. I've got Uzoma at 3.2 receptions according to the Blitz, which is a nice little edge versus this 2.5. No projection for him on Fantasy Labs, unfortunately. But he would be one that you could lean over on. And then Kendall Blanton, I've got him projected at about 3.5. So another over option, especially if Higbee's out, but really only if Higbee's out for me. And then we got Blanton projected for 3.1 receptions, so a slight favorite to go over according to the Fantasy Labs models. All right, so let's keep things moving here. Fantasy score. What do I have for receivers in fantasy score? Receivers and tight ends, I should say. I've only got two projections. One would be Cooper Kupp, who's at 23.5. I have him projected for 28 on the blitz, but we do have to take 3 points away because of the bonus. So really he's at 25. So still a slight favorite to go over at 23.5. That would be the lean over on Cooper Kupp at 23.5. And then Jamar Chase, who's at 18 fantasy points. He does not project for a 100-yard receiving game, so we don't have to take any points away from him. So 19.1, again, an over on Jamar Chase. So you could go over on Cooper Kupp's fantasy, over on Jamar Chase's fantasy points. But those are the only two that I have projections for, unfortunately. Continuing through some of these, let's see, receiving touchdowns, Cooper Kupp at 1, Jamar Chase at 0.5. I've got Cooper Kupp projected for 0.75 receiving touchdowns, Jamar Chase at 0.47. So pretty sharp numbers. Cooper Kupp, most likely, if he catches one touchdown, it'll be a push. I think you take this at 1 and probably take the over and just hope that he finds at least 2 touchdowns. But at worst, I mean, I think it ends up being a push situation. Hopefully he finds the end zone at least one time for you, though. Other ones that maybe we can consider, let's see, any other prop categories that I feel comfortable with? Not really. Like I said, a lot of these other ones are just going to be totally fly by the seat of your pants. You're flying blind, going into it dark kind of thing. Probably not going to go there for any of those. A little bit of discussion about Tyler Higbee. Some people saying that they thought he was placed on IR. I don't know. Not sure about that. Call me touch CMT. So all overs? Well, not all overs. I think not all overs are created equally, if that makes any sense. I think there's certain players that you feel a little bit more confident, more comfortable in going over on than others, obviously. You know, your high usage guys that are getting a lot of touches and targets and things like that. Your Cooper Kupps, your Jamar Chases, you know, guys like that. I think for me, I'm going to approach the Super Bowl game as either I'm taking overs or I'm just going to fade. I'm just looking for overs pretty much, which is probably my downfall. Maybe we should be considering more unders, but hey, life's too short, as they say, to take the under. Otherwise, gang, I mean, I don't know really what else we can get into. We talked quarterbacks, we talked running backs, we talked wide receivers and tight ends. We talked touchdowns. We talked some fantasy scores. We talked, you know, all the different player prop categories. If you guys have any questions, throw me a couple of your questions. And by questions, I'm thinking we're talking NFL questions, not NBA today. If you have any props, anything that I didn't get a chance to really like dig into, but I think we went pretty deep on a lot of these. King United, you're liking some McPherson. Let's see if I have anything that can help us out here with Mr. McPherson. McPherson's been great though, guys. In terms of consistency in covering a player prop, Mr. McPherson's been McNice when covering his player props. Let's see if I have anything for McPherson. Let's take a look. Fantasy score. McPherson's at 9 fantasy points. He's covered this in 5 straight games. 11, 15, 18, and 15. I do have him projected for just 7 fantasy points today. 7. As far as field goals, I got him projected for 1.5 field goals 1.5 field goals. So they're not liking McPherson a whole lot. But listen, I'll tell you this. In the past, the blitz hasn't really loved McPherson either in the past, and he's come through. I mean, 5 straight games, he continues to come through. As far as Matt Gay, I've got him at 8.5 fantasy points over on PrizePicks, projected for about 8 fantasy points, so still slightly less than his number on PrizePicks. Got him projected for 1.6 field goal makes, 2.7 extra point makes. I guess we got defense, right? We could look at that real quick while we're here. Projections for defense. I got the Rams at 6 fantasy points, 6.1 fantasy points. So you could take the over on them from what it looks like. And then the Bengals, they're at 4.5 fantasy points. I have them projected for 5.2 fantasy points. So both of these defenses look like they're kind of projected a little on the low side. We do have field goal makes, which, again, what I just talked about. They've got pretty good numbers up for these guys, though. Matt Gay's at 2. McPherson's at 1.5. So, didn't see a huge edge on either one of those. Dylan says, don't forget the kickers. Thanks for the super chat, Dylan. Yeah, we definitely cannot forget the kickers, right? So, yeah, not seeing a great edge on either one of these guys in terms of the field goal make props. Strategies for running your free $500 5-pick flex entry. Some people are saying they're going to take some NFL props, parlay them with some NBA props. Okay, cool. I like that. Little mix and match. You don't have to go straight up NFL. You don't have to go straight up NBA with that 5-pick flex entry. Aaron says, never doubt McPherson. I feel you. Cup longest play. Like I said, I don't have any information on that. So it would just be like, well, my gut says, which I don't like to do. My gut says we should go over. I typically like to play stuff that has like numbers, data, like solid information behind it, which is going to be really difficult for a lot of these props that are up on the board. So I'm like probably not going to get into any of these. Yeah, you don't have any logs or anything for any of these plays, but I mean, who your guys who are going to stretch the field are, right? It's going to be Cooper Kupp potentially for a long play, Jamar Chase potentially for a long play. Like those guys can catch easily a 30, 40, 50, 60-yard bomb. Burrow could obviously throw for a bomb. Stafford could throw for a bomb. We could even catch OBJ for a bomb. I mean, tough though. Tough to really put any hardcore numbers behind any of that. Kupp has hit the over on longest play in 15 games this season. There you go. See, that's why we do these live streams. Guys are coming through with some clutch information. Aaron's been doing his homework, had his books cracked. But yeah, Kupp, like I said, probably one of the prime candidates. Obviously, Jamar Chase is just known for going deep. So you could go there. PAT made. Xavier's asking about Matt Gay, PAT made. I do have a couple of projections for extra points. Matt Gay's at 2.7 XP. McPherson's at 2.2 XP. So, Xavier, to answer your question, that would be a slight lean toward the over on Mr. Matt Gay. Todd, you can I don't think you even have to use your 5-pick entry today. If I'm not mistaken, can't you carry it over to any day and use it whenever you want? Like on a future NBA slate or whatever it is you're most comfortable with, CSGO, PGA. Like, I don't think you have to use it today. I could be wrong, but if I am wrong, let me know if I'm wrong. But I think you can use it whenever you want. Yeah, I don't know about Higgins, Boyd. Kind of interesting options there. Higgins projects really well. Boyd, like Mr. Joey Harrington was saying earlier, could be an interesting option. Roger says, don't take Boyd. He will fail you. Higgins seems to get more, and if Uzoma is out, then that will take targets away. I can get down with that line of thought. Isaac wants to know, who are we taking for the opening coin toss? Tails never fails? Do we have that up here on the board? I don't know. Maybe we do. I don't see anything for opening coin toss. But yeah, tails never fails, right? Is Uzoma 100%? I was hearing some stories about Uzoma may not be 100%, but he's going to try to give it a go. Nathan's liking some Burrow over rushing attempts. He thinks that could be potentially intriguing. Let's take a look. 2.5 rushing attempts for Joe Burrow. Maybe we could dig into this way. Let's see if Pro Football Reference can help us out here. So we can look at the defenses here and see how many rushing attempts like the Rams are giving up per game. They're giving up about 3.4 rushing attempts per game to opposing quarterbacks. So I guess there's a little bit of upside here. Same thing with Stafford. Cincinnati giving up about 3.3 rushing attempts per game to opposing quarterbacks. So you'd have to dig in a little bit deeper and see how many rushing attempts that Stafford and Burrow average per game. And maybe you kind of compare that to how many the Bengals and Rams are giving up respectively. Gotcha. So you're saying that the coin flip is available on some of the sports betting sites out there. Interesting. Very interesting. Do we like the Rams defense over 3.5 sacks? I mean, Burrow's been put on his butt quite a bit lately, so I don't hate that. I think that could definitely be a look. We've seen Burrow get pretty hammered here in terms of football. Not that he's on the bottle or anything, but he's been getting hammered here lately. Gordon saying that he's liking some Joe Burrow over passing attempts as Rams blitz a lot. Also really love Mixon over receptions and yards. Yeah, we talked about liking some Burrow over pass attempts. Looked a little bit low. I mean, I could definitely see a situation where like Cincinnati kind of gets behind, and Burrow's going to have to throw it a little bit more. His pass attempts we talked about were at 36.5. He's covered in 4 out of his last 5 games. So, yeah, I don't mind you taking a shot on Burrow. We had him projected to go slightly over 36.5 according to the Blitz by Derek Carty. So, very trusted player prop projection models according to the Blitz, What's up, Dylan? Thanks for dropping by. Yeah, I think we had Burrow slightly over fantasy points. Kenlin, you're liking some QB hits. Yeah, maybe you take the over. Is QB hits? Yeah, maybe you take the over on QB hits for the Rams. We don't really have a ton of data in there, but like I said, Burrow's been getting popped quite a bit throughout the playoff run here. Huber over 3.5 punts. John, I don't know, man. A lot of these props are going to be a little wild. You're rolling the dice on that one. I probably won't go there, like I said. Jack is asking about Cam Akers under a touchdown. Yeah, we did talk about Cam Akers. He has not found the end zone in 5 straight games. And then we talked about Darrell Henderson being back. I mean, for me, I don't know how McVay would kind of like deploy Darrell Henderson. But you've got Henderson, you've got Akers, you've got Sony Michel. I would probably want to say, maybe think that Darrell Henderson's more your goal line back in those situations. Maybe he vultures the touchdowns away from Cam Akers. Maybe you take the under on Cam Akers and his rushing touchdowns, but complete speculation. Really don't know how McVay is going to use all of these different running backs. But we also have to keep in mind that this is not just a rushing touchdown. This can be a receiving touchdown as well. Can be a rushing or receiving touchdown. But maybe with Henderson back, that kind of cuts into Cam Akers and his productivity. $11 targets to Kupp. Let me see if I have any info on that. If I have any kind of like projections or anything for Cooper Kupp. I don't have a targets projection for Cooper Kupp unless it's hidden. Let me look. Oh, yep, I do. Boom. So you're asking about targets for Kupp. I've got Kupp projected for about 12.5 targets. Jamar Chase projected for about 9.2 targets. So, yeah, this number at 11, the blitz likes him to go over 11 targets, 12.5 targets. So you could definitely take a shot on Cooper Kupp going over 11 targets. Gross punt yards. Any thoughts on it? They're gross. I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea. Gross punt yards. I mean, anybody in chat have anything on gross punt yards? Are you guys looking at Johnny Hecker? Are you looking at Kevin Huber here for gross punt yards? I mean, how many punts do you think that we see in this game? I guess you gotta kind of start there and then maybe look at, the averages for these two punters per game. How many yards do they average, air yards or gross punt yards per punt that these two punters average per punt? I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to go on this huge game tonight, obviously, but I don't think I'm going gross punt yards. Yeah, Adrian, you're liking the Cooper Kupp over longest play. I think that is A-okay. I think Jamar Chase for longest play is also looking kind of sweet. Mac Wall is saying that he's looking to go under on both punters for gross punt yards. So you're thinking that we're going to see fewer punts potentially? Zach Gill saying he could see at least 2 punts by one team in the first quarter. Yeah, you have to dig in a little deeper for these gross punt yards. Like I said, factor in how many punts you think these teams will have. Factor in how many yards that these two punters, gross punt yards, typically average per punt. Maybe you could come up with a guesstimation, an informed decision on these gross punt yards. Aaron Rodgers says, imagine watching the Super Bowl getting mad when teams don't punt. Yeah. Listen, I think there's going to be just so many wild ways to go on this game. Gordon says, CJ, what are your top 3 favorite lines of the day? Top 3 favorite lines of the day. Well, that is a pretty broad question, and I don't know that I completely understand what you're asking. I will tell you this, though. As far as the props that have some of the biggest edges, I'll just do a quick recap for you. Samaje Perine's rushing yards, pretty big edge on that if you want to take a gamble. Sony Michel's receiving yards, also really big edge on that one. Michel's receptions, pretty big edge on that one. But a lot of these running back props are just very sketch, guys. Just never know. Running backs and receiving yards and receptions and stuff like that, like, obviously can be very volatile. Kendall Blanton receiving yards could be a huge edge on that one, pending the Tyler Higbee situation. Joe Mixon's rushing yards, that looks like a pretty big edge on that one. Samaje Perine's receptions, Tyler Boyd's receiving yards. I mean, these are the ones, according to the Blitz, that have the biggest edges, the biggest differentials in between like your favorite sports books or sites like PrizePicks versus the projections on the Blitz. CJ Uzoma, receptions, pretty big edge on that one. All of these have like 20% or better in terms of like the edge. Evan McPherson field goals over or under. I had Evan McPherson going for less than under his field goal number. As far as a projection on McPherson, he's at 1.5 projected field goals right now. 1.5 projected field goals for McPherson is what I have him projected for. He's at exactly 1.5 over on PrizePicks. So you're flipping a coin, guys, in this situation. But I think that most folks are probably going to lean toward the over on McPherson, right? Jason says, so what's the deal? Is Eminem going to make some dumb political statement during halftime? Or I have no idea. Is there props out there for what Eminem's going to do at the halftime show? Yeah, you could. That's a good point, Ray. First half props, you could definitely go like first half on some of these. So like maybe you think like Cincinnati in the first half is going to go maybe more run heavy in the first half. Maybe you take like some Joe Mixon over 29.5 rushing yards. Maybe you think Cincinnati ends up falling behind in the second half and that they abandoned the run game due to game script. Maybe Mixon gets game scripted out in the second half and we see more Mixon second half receiving yard situation. And maybe we see more Mixon rushing yards in the first half type of situation. You're saying over. You guys are all riding the over from what it looks like on Evan McPherson and his field goals. I think you were liking the over on Evan McPherson and his fantasy points as well. I mean, it's hard not to like Evan McPherson with the way that he's been playing lately. But yeah, Bengals typically struggle in the red zone. They're really good at hitting those long plays. So yeah, you could probably take an over on, as far as longest plays, maybe an over on Joe Burrow. Maybe an over on Jamar Chase. 38.5 longest play for Joe Burrow. I mean, if he hooks up with Jamar Chase, one bomb, boom, over. The projections were really liking some T. Higgins over on yards today, Gordon. Just an FYI. Van Jefferson was also projected to go over Jason. I think that was a good look. Alvin's liking some McPherson over 1.5 field goal makes. Love it. What is my favorite pick? I don't know. I don't know what my favorite pick is. My favorite player, the guys that I probably feel most comfortable on would probably be like a guy like Cooper Kupp. I mean, I saw some pretty big numbers for as far as his projection. And how do you like not like Cooper Kupp in any game, in any situation, but especially in this one, the biggest game, biggest stage of them all? Like Cooper Kupp, he should make you feel like warm and cozy inside, right? They're putting Jalen Ramsey on Jamar Chase. Well, listen, Mike Evans doesn't have the wheels that Jamar Chase does, and we saw him get loose against Jalen Ramsey. So I don't know that I'm necessarily afraid of Jalen Ramsey. King Chris, you're kind of in agreement. You're liking some Cooper Kupp over receiving yards. Yeah, like I said, hard not to like Cooper Kupp. Anything else though, guys? I mean, I think we've been pretty thorough. We've dug in on one NFL game about as much as I think we could dig in. Sounds like we've landed on some pretty solid plays. Hopefully some of the research and stuff that we've done here, some of the numbers we've thrown out there, lead you to victory, man. I wish everybody out there who has the $500 free 5-pick flex entry the best of luck. I would love to see as many of you hit that $5,000 prize. So, unless you guys have any last minute questions, then I'm probably gonna get up out of here and go get ready for the game. Pre-game for the big game. Jamar Chase is gonna burn Ramsey. I'm not mad at you saying that. I think that is definitely possible. Jared, how do you get that entry? Well, you had to complete the 7-step challenge, the road to 56. You had to opt in at the beginning of the challenge. You had to complete the daily challenges for 7 straight days, and that would unlock the $500 free 5-pick flex entry to win up to $5,000. So that's how. So if you didn't do all those things, then I'm sorry. Unfortunately, you've probably missed that boat. The ship has sailed. Yeah, I'll be in Discord for sure throughout the day, trying to help as many people as possible. Yep. $5,000 in promo funds. You get to play up to $100 in promo per day. But listen, you think about $5,000 in promo funds, what you could turn that into by playing $100 in promo every single day. I mean, if you're a decent player when it comes to playing prize picks, you could easily convert that $5,000 in promo into real credits and possibly multiply it even more. I mean, $100 4-pick power play that pays out 10x. You get 50 shots at 50 different $100 4-pick power plays. I mean, I'm just saying, like, that's 10 extra money on top of the 5,000. Like, there's a lot of potential here for you to flip that 5,000 into a lot if you're a decent player. You could 2-pick power it. I mean, like, it's a lot of cheddar cheese there, $5,000. And then once you convert it all to credits, hey, you could withdraw it if you want to. You could take some off, take some profits. 50 $100 shots in the bag. That's right. There you go. Anyways, gang, appreciate everybody joining me. If you have not liked today's stream, appreciate you doing that on your way out. I'm going to get up out of here. You guys will see me back here tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time. And then we'll be back on the NBA grind. NBA All-Star break is coming up in the next few days. We've only got a few more days of NBA before we take a little bit of a break, about a 1-week break. So we got to make the most of it, right? Try to cash in on these next couple of NBA slates. But yeah, I'm going to get up out of here, man. Good luck tonight. If you are going for the $5,000 prize, I wish you luck. I hope everybody hits. Until then, though, catch you on the next one. Peace.